Good morning, everyone who just came in. We're going to go on and get started. Just want to welcome you all to the A Better Life Together Bridge Project Wednesday webinar series. The Bridge Project stands for Bridging Resources into Diverse Groups Everywhere. I'll be sure to link to our webpage on the abetterlifetogether.org website and also put my contact information. You all will get a notification that we've posted the replay for today. I also want to let everyone know that we are, in fact, recording. We make these replays available on Fridays in the afternoons of the week that we have our Wednesday webinar. I don't want to delay too much further. Now that we have our disclaimers, we'll have a little Q&A at the end. I am so excited to have Crystal Sanford back from Sanford Autism Consulting. I have been waiting for this. I learned so much during her first time at the Wednesday webinar series right after we began, and I've begun to follow her. I encourage you all to do the same. Follow her Instagram. You'll get trailers, sound bites of her podcast. You'll get her wisdom as a mom, and you'll get her education. Everything that she has learned, she has been sharing with parents. And I, for one, this last year, I just take little notes. I just take little notes every time I see something that she's posted. I'm so excited again to have Crystal back with us today. And we're still, you all see my background's a little different. I'm not on the blue background. Avon, our project manager's on her blue background over at ABLT. But we're still doing the COVID clap. This hand, far, far, far from this hand. Please put your hands together for Crystal Sanford. Thank you all.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It is just an honor to be here again and to share with families and to have so many people that I didn't even expect to be here and support. So it's just really an honor. Thank you. Thank you for this opportunity. Great, perfect. So welcome here, everyone. We are going to be discussing how to prepare for your best IEP meeting yet. And I hope that you leave here with tips that will encourage you and support you along your IEP journey. So a little bit about me. I am an autism mom. I have a daughter on the autism spectrum. She's 10, which, yes, I said daughter because that's often kind of rare. You typically think of boys, but I have a daughter on the spectrum in 5th grade and doing well. I'm also a special needs sibling. I have a sister who is approaching 60, a surprise. I can't believe how time flies. And she has developmental disabilities. I'm also a speech pathologist. I have practiced for over 20 years in a variety of public schools within California. And most recently, as of 2016, I opened my practice as a special education advocate and consultant, and really with a focus on helping to bridge the gap between schools and families, being able to provide support and helping parents find their voice in the IEP process. And using my experiences as a district employee, as a speech pathologist, as well as being a parent, I fuse those things together and able to using that to support families. And it's a picture of my older picture of my family there. And so again, the purpose of my practice, Sanford Autism Consulting, is really to empower families, helping to move you from frustration and overwhelm to confidence and hope. So a little bit of proprietary information. Just know that the information that's found here in the PowerPoint is not to be reproduced if it is found on a website, if you have access to that. And then also know that the information that is shared is for your informational purposes only. If you're looking for medical or legal advice and specifics about your case, I do encourage you to contact a professional in that area. So we will get started in beginning with our discussion. I know we're going to talk about preparing for your best IEP meeting yet, but families, it's really important to know a little bit about the history of special education so that we can understand where we've come from and where we are now. So then and now, a little bit about special education history. So the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, IDEA, which is our nation's special education law, originated in 1975. So considering that, it's still a fairly young field in our country. With the most recent update in 2004, I think we are all looking to see if there will be a more recent update coming along the way in the next few years, but the most recent update was in 2004. And so really the basis of IDEA is that schools are responsible to find and provide a free and appropriate education. And that is for children who are suspected to have special needs or disability, unique needs, and providing that in the least restrictive environment. So FAPE in the LRE. I often tell parents that there's so many acronyms, things that are thrown around there, but remember FAPE in the LRE. Your child should have access to that free and appropriate education, and it should be in an environment where they have the most access to their general education peers as possible. And there are a host of rights for parents and children under IDEA. I know that often parents feel overwhelmed and they feel as though, wow, there's just pushback and such things, but just know that you do have rights, and there's nothing wrong with asking about and actively using your rights under the federal law. IDEA covers kiddos from birth to 21. In California, that goes a little bit longer, up to that age or until they receive their high school diploma. So at any point that your child receives a high school diploma, then all services through the special education or the school district would end at that time. And then also know that federal law is what drives IEPs, as well as our California Education Code. And so with those two factors in mind, let's think about what is happening now. We know where we've come from, but what's happening in special education? Well, there has been an exponential growth in the number of children that require special education support. If you look at the more common quote unquote disabilities or eligibility categories, which are different. But if you look at the different ways that children are found eligible for services, autism has increased. There's just been a huge growth in the number of children that are identified with autism, dyslexia, specific learning disability, other health impaired, often for our kiddos who have attention challenges. That's one of the ones that are most common. And then Section 504 plans. All of these areas have increased exponentially in our country. However, there has not been a significant growth in the amount of supports and funding that goes there. So, honestly, the system is broken. Teams are doing the best they can with what they have. Often teams are overwhelmed, overworked, over caseload, and often doing the best they can with what they have. But there's just not enough resources for often IEPs to be implemented with the integrity that they should. And so, what is the solution? We know that there's a problem, but the solution is, and what I propose at my practice is that parents are working collaboratively with IEP teams and schools so that children have access to that free and appropriate education and their rights under the law. So know that education is a business. I encourage parents not to look at the IEP teams or schools as the enemy. Truly, they are your team members in the IEP team. You are, as a parent, one of the primary members, but they are team members, business partners in this relationship, but it is a business relationship. And as we learn how to handle ourselves in a professional business manner, I believe that that will serve you well in advocating for your child's education. So sometimes it feels a little bit upside down, but as we work together, we can help to make some gains. So 5 tips that I'll be sharing today around how to prepare for your best IEP meeting yet. And I do love quotes, so I had to at least add one here today. And the quote is, in life, we make mistakes, we learn from them, and we do better next time. So I always encourage parents as I'm sharing information, if you find yourself having experienced some of the things that we're sharing here, don't feel bad. You know better as of today's class, and you will do better, and you'll make changes in your child's IEP. So tip number 1 is to take time to review for your child's IEP. Take time, prepare. I think that this is really simplistic, but really important. So when I say take time, one thing is to review the IEP documents. Think about, you had an IEP meeting a year ago, hopefully they are due annually. Did you actually get a copy of that final IEP? Often you'll be in IEP meetings, things will get discussed, but parents don't necessarily immediately get a copy of the final draft after everything has been added, all the notes from the IEP meeting. So did you get that final copy? Think about that. Look through your documents. Do you have current copies of your child's IEP? If you have IEP meetings that are upcoming, always consider requesting a copy of those documents, especially if it is an assessment time. So if it's an initial first time assessment for your child to see if they might be found eligible for services, or if it's their 3-year time when they are being reevaluated, there will be plenty of assessments that are conducted, and those reports can be quite lengthy. And so in lieu of coming to an IEP meeting and having all that information presented to you, and then you're expected to sign a document, which, how meaningful can you participate when you're just getting the information at the meeting? I always encourage parents to request a copy ahead of time. Now, it's not a requirement under the law that teams do that, but it's a courtesy, and often teams will give you a copy of those documents. I have a case that's ongoing right now, and parents requested a copy of the documents 7 to 10 days prior to the meeting. We go way early with that, and the team has responded that they're going to provide that within 48 hours before the meeting. Well, we'll take it. We'll take it as soon as we can get that, so that we can have access to review and prepare. And, if you're a parent engaging in your IEP meeting, that at least gives you a couple of days to review, start building your questions as well. I also encourage you to organize your past IEP documents. It can be very overwhelming in the midst of IEP meetings, and you think about, oh, I remember something got said here or there. So I always encourage parents over the summer, if you can, and it's still early in the year now, to gather your IEP documents in a way that you can easily access them. It could be hard copies in a binder that's separated by year, or it's separated by types of meetings. It could be a digital form files that you have on your computer, where you have a folder for every year. But finding a way where you can easily access those IEP documents can be super helpful and help you in preparing for your upcoming meetings. And then lastly, creating a separate email account can also help you to prepare and also help you to save time and stay organized. So if you have a family email account, which is what we decided to create, you can use that email account specifically for engaging with your IEP team. So any of the email back and forth that goes on, it goes specifically through that one email account. That can help you to keep all that good information in one space, and making it easier for you to access. All right, so my second tip is developing a parent input statement. This is something that you can do every year, annually, creating a concise 1 to 2 paragraph statement. And often people think about in January, developing like a vision statement for the year, something similar to that, developing a statement that you can share with your IEP team and present that each year. And there is in every IEP a section for parent concerns. And this is where this information may be added, or it may be added as a PDF attachment to your IEP. But you can consider in that parent input statement adding information about your child, just briefly. What are their strengths? What are their challenges? What are their interests right now? What are their goals for the future? We've been doing this for a while for my daughter. She's in 5th grade now, but I want to say since 3rd grade, we've been adding in her feedback, and I'm always watching to see what she's interested in, especially kiddos on the spectrum can often have some specific interests. And so those things, those interests can potentially be areas of growth for them that could become a way of employment in the future. And so considering what is your child interested in, those are ways as you continue to keep them a part of the IEP document. They are going to continue to be invested in their education, especially as they get older, because often our kiddos struggle more as it gets into middle and high school. And so if we can keep their interest in what they're looking at the forefront, I believe that we're going to have a better chance of keeping them invested in their education and having them more actively participate. So in this parent input statement, I would say to share a little bit about your child's strengths, as an example, I often, in the teachings that I give to parents, I give them an example. My child is Mario. Mario has great interests in, trains and anything transportation related. He also has difficulty with, we start with the strengths. So he's also really great with technology and a really friendly child. But he also has difficulty sitting still. He may appear to not be paying attention, and he may struggle in that area. What's working for him right now is gaining his eye contact when we give him instructions. My concerns for this year are in the area of math and making sure that he has movement breaks. And that could be a simple parent input statement paragraph that can be added to your IEP document. And so then everyone's on the same page and knowing who your child is and what the goals are for that year. So developing the statement can be a really powerful way for you to make sure that your voice is heard, your child's voice is heard, and this can be developed prior to your IEP meeting. Our next tip is recording your IEP meeting. And this is in California, your right to record your IEP meeting as long as you inform your team with giving them at least 24 hours notice that you will be recording. And I say inform that you'll be recording. It is your right. You don't have to ask, can I record the meeting? I was just curious. No, you don't have to do that. It's your right, and you can inform the team, I will be recording my IEP meeting, and you can let them know that ahead of time. I encourage parents to use a digital recorder with batteries on hand, just because, who knows when it comes to using our cell phones, although there are apps for that as well, if you're more tech savvy. But, sometimes, issues occur, or maybe there's not enough space on your cell phone. So, you could easily invest in a digital recorder that you can use to record your IEP meetings throughout the year. And why would you want to record? Well, it provides you with, of course, as I've noted here, evidence for the future. Things happen and things are said sometimes at IEP meetings that people don't intend to say. Maybe, again, it's a lengthy meeting, maybe it's an assessment year. And so there's a lot of information to be shared. If you record, you can at least review that at home. If you're more of an auditory person, you can listen to it as well as you're looking at the document. So having a recording of your IEP meeting can be very valuable. Also, if you are in the future needing to, potentially file a complaint or exercise your rights under the law in that regard, you will have documentation of what was said at the IEP meeting. And I have been at meetings where team members surprise each other by sharing information or things are said. And so it can be a really valuable resource to have things on recording at that IEP meeting. And so next, don't go it alone. If it is at all possible, I always encourage parents to bring someone with them to the IEP meeting. And that could be someone which is another right that you have as a parent with a child with an IEP, someone who has special knowledge about your child. You can bring someone with you. Why? Well, for moral support. I've often seen IEP meetings where parents are there alone. However, there are 10 people from the school district who are attending as well. So there's a case manager, there's speech pathologist, school psychologist, all these people, and then there's one parent. And if a meeting doesn't go well, a parent can easily feel as though it's us against them, which it ought not be that, but it can definitely feel that way. And so having someone with you can provides a level of moral support for you, emotional support as well. The nature of IEPs is an emotional situation. We are all very invested in our children and we want the best for them. And it can become an emotional time. So if you anticipate, feeling all the feelings at your IEP meeting, it can be very helpful to have someone with you who is there, who is listening with that unbiased ear, potentially, who can be there to kind of help you to stay on track and ask some of those important questions. Some of the options of who can attend IEP meetings with you, you can always ask for your regional center service coordinator. That is a potential support person for you. If your child has private therapists, if they are seeing a speech pathologist, through your insurance or that your private pay, BCBA, if they have behavior supports that are going on, or RBT, an advocate such as myself or others, as well as family members who may attend with you, the neighbor who knows your child very well, the babysitter, just someone who can go with you as a space of support, can be really helpful in helping you to stay on track and make meaning from your IEP. Our last tip is to watch your words. So as we're preparing for the IEP meeting, considering your words, parents, our words are very powerful. And so one thing to consider is prepare your questions ahead of time before the meeting. And again, if you've had access to the documents, you'll have some content to be able to work from to start preparing those questions. But as you're in the meeting and you're thinking about preparing for your meeting, think about asking questions that are for clarification, instead of questions that can be a little bit more accusatory. So for example, if you know that there's some difficulty with your child receiving their speech services, instead of asking the speech pathologist, why haven't you provided my kid with their speech? Well, that can definitely set the that SLP, that speech pathologist, on the defensive. Again, we want to try to work as collaboratively as possible with our teams. So in lieu of that, you may ask a question such as to the speech pathologist, can you tell me more about what speech therapy looks like for my child? Can you tell me what a specific a session might look like? What are the goals that are being addressed? How has my child been performing over the past few weeks? Again, asking questions for clarifications. It sounds as though my child hasn't received their services. Can you tell me more about, what the services looks like? When can we, how can we anticipate supporting you in this area? Again, questions for clarification versus those that are more accusatory are going to help you make more movement in that IEP process. Another thing to consider when we think about watching our words is that word best versus appropriate. And if you're taking something away from here, this is one thing to consider. As parents, we all want what's best for our child, right? Of course, that is what we want. However, is what's best a requirement under the law? Well, the answer to that is no. As we've discussed, the IEP is to position our child to receive a free and appropriate education. And so it is not for our child to receive, and a district responsible to provide what is best. If you believe that hippotherapy is what's best for your child, so to be able to engage, with equine therapy or whatever these kind of different options or services might be, you might have learned about that, and that might be, in your opinion, what's best. But the school is responsible to provide what is a free and appropriate education. And so I encourage parents, use that language when you're engaging with your team. You might say, if there's pushback about a goal, for an example, you might share, your input and say that, wow, I see this goal here. It's in the area of, fine motor skills, but it doesn't really sound as though it's appropriate to my child's unique needs. Can you tell me more about this goal? Is there a way for us to refine that? So, versus saying, this goal is horrible. This is not what's best for my child. Again, we want to work collaboratively. We want to keep as much of a positive interaction as we can, while definitely requiring teams to do their due diligence and to provide your child with what is appropriate. So using that language of appropriate can be very helpful. Also consider, parents, that you have the right to meaningfully participate in your child's education. And so meaningful parent participation is something that you can use as you're interacting with the team. If, again, you're seeing pushback, you might share, wow, it appears that our IEP meeting is being delayed. I'm not feeling the opportunity. I don't have the opportunity to meaningfully participate in my child's education because our meeting has been delayed. What can we do to work together to make sure that this IEP meeting happens in a more timely manner? So again, using that language that is language that supports what is under the law is what you can use to see more meaningful progress. And then lastly here, trigger words, words that can not serve you as well, or words that you want to avoid. So for example, impossible. It's impossible for my child to get an appropriate education at this school. This team never listens to me. You always disregard what I say. That is the kind of language that is not going to serve well. We want to see you as a parent being seen as a reasonable participating party, that you're being as reasonable as possible. So again, in lieu of those kinds of words, consider asking questions of clarification. Consider using language that is more matter of fact. And by using those words, again, this is what I do as an advocate in teams and supporting parents. This is where I have seen the most progress. And so here are a few more tips and tricks as we talk about preparing for that IEP meeting, just going a little bit more into depth about what we've just discussed. Again, asking those clarifying questions or things that you can do, stating the facts. The facts are that, the child has not received OT for 3 months versus you guys are terrible, you haven't done this. Again, stating it as matter of fact, and then allowing the team to respond in a way that they can say yay or nay, or what they're going to do to resolve the issue. You want to give them the opportunity, let them speak and let them almost, in some cases, kind of, dig their own hole. You want to be seen as the reasonable party and allow them to respond to the facts. And as much as you can, get that in writing. Make sure that these things that are discussed are added into the IEP document somewhere. So again, stating those facts. If the team responds and says, yes, you're right, we haven't given your child OT, make sure that that statement is added into the IEP somewhere in the meeting notes, or if nothing else, as we've talked about, it's recorded and you have that in your recording as well. And when you think about interacting with your team in preparation for your IEP meeting, sending those short and sweet emails, 5 sentences or less with bullet points. This is where you're going to see more movement. And then also sending those emails to individual parties on the team versus sending emails to the entire team and the superintendent of the district. I know sometimes parents, we get so frustrated that we just go really big. But that's not always going to serve you really well in getting the information that you need and ultimately seeing your child get the services and supports that they deserve. So short and sweet with your emails and using those bullet points, just being really clear in your interaction with the team. Again, we're talking about avoiding those emotionally charged words, and then also trying to avoid things such as bold and caps. Again, that's going to set people, become triggers and set them in defensive. We want to be seen as the collaborative team member. because there is a space for teams to say that the parent is not being cooperative and the parent is not being collaborative. And that's not going to serve you well in the future if it is that you need to go forward with filing complaints or exercising your parent rights. Something else to consider, as we talked about, bringing someone with you, preparing for that as well. Having another person, especially as a professional, they are seen as a reliable reporter in comparison to parents who are so invested and so biased. Parents' opinions are not often seen as reliable. And so if you're able to refer to your child's OT or your child's, private speech therapist or their ABA provider, referring to them versus your own opinion can serve you much better in your IEP process. So my last quote is that teamwork is the ability to work together toward a common vision, and truly the vision is your child's success. So as much as we can become, upset, frustrated, overwhelmed, again, the goal is to work collaboratively with the focus of your child's success. And so that is what I encourage parents to continue to engage with, to be considering from the beginning is this going to help me move forward in advocating for my child? Is this email, is this question going to help move forward with the long-term goal of my child's success? And if you can keep that in mind and help to keep teams accountable to that as well, that's where we're going to see the most progress. So a few parting words. Again, know, parents, that you do have a host of rights under federal law IDEA. And so I know often parents will say that, they're afraid, they don't want to speak up, they don't want to be seen as that parent. Let me tell you, I'm an advocate, but I'm a parent. And I'm that parent, but I know how to be that parent in a way that is still a collaborative team member with my child's IEP team. So there's nothing wrong with you exercising your rights, asking teams to be accountable, asking those really poignant questions, clarifying questions to your team, because the law supports you being able to do that as a parent of a child with an IEP. And then also know that you do know your child best. As much as the other professionals have degrees and have experience, and they may know your child, I say to parents, have a PhD in your child. You do bring value to the table and insight that should be listened to, appreciated, and then added and collaboratively worked together in ways of supporting your child. My next piece of information and tip I always tell parents is ask questions and trust your gut. Sometimes parents are not sure, should I say this? This doesn't feel right or sound right. I have a parent that reached out to me this week, and as much as they don't know a lot about IEPs, they did know that something just didn't sound right. It didn't feel right. And so, I encourage you parents, ask questions. If you're not sure about something, ask the team and then let them provide a response. And so that you can see how you need to move forward, and trust your gut. If something doesn't sound right, doesn't feel right, ask about that, because likely you are correct. And then lastly, seek help if needed, because you truly are not alone. There are many groups that are out there. There are parent groups that are supporting parents as nonprofits. There are also many advocates, awesome special education attorneys that will also consult with you as well. And so you have access to supports. And if you want to engage in asking questions in that regard, always do that. Feel free to do that. And I encourage you to do that. Because your child should be receiving that free and appropriate education in if their school. And if they're not, then there are ways that you can help to support that and move that process along. So thank you so much for listening, and hope that you were able to take some pieces away that will help to support you along your IEP journey. If you are interested in learning more about what we offer, again, as Melissa shared, we're active on social media, specifically on Facebook and Instagram. We do have a podcast, Thriving Special Families, where I interview professionals, parents, experts, anyone who has anything to do with special needs, children with unique needs, neurodiversity, parenting. So you can get some really great information there in a fun and lively environment. We also have a 25-minute audio lesson for parents who are new to a diagnosis for their child. So you have access to that as well. All right, and so I'm going to stop my share.
Everyone, if we can do another clap. Thank you so much, Crystal. I so appreciate the opportunity to take another 2 pages of notes. Thank you so very much for joining us today on the Wednesday webinar series. Does anyone have any questions for Crystal? If you don't feel comfortable coming off mute and coming on camera, feel free to type your questions into the chat. I do have some comments, a lot of comments. That was great. Crystal, thank you. Thank you from Allison. That was the first one was from Seth Swartz, attorney Seth Swartz. Avon, very informative. Thank you. That is our Better Life Together Bridge project manager. Avon, if you'll wave one more time. She is over our service, access, and equity team, the Bridge Project. We do have one question. Does the IEP follow the child to college?
That's a great question. And so, schools are, again, responsible to provide services until the child receives their high school diploma. At that point, services would end from the school district. However, I always encourage children, parents, young adults to engage with their disability services department at a college if they're going to be attending a college, and potentially they may have access to accommodations through their college. So things such as note-taking, or maybe increased time to be able to complete assignments, those kinds of accommodations may be accessible to a child who's attending college.
All right. I don't see any further questions in the chat. So we are just a little bit ahead of 11 a.m. Okay, we did have a follow-up question, but there is no more IEP in college.
Correct, that there is not an IEP that would follow a child into college. They would have access to accommodations to support them. Those would fall more under the Section 504 plan and law and services for for young adults. But the IEP itself would end as soon as they receive either a high school diploma or in California, reach the age of 22 and a half. But there are definitely services that they can access, bringing maybe a copy of their most current IEP or IEP assessments to the Disability Services Department, and seeing they may need to go through some types of assessments or seeing the procedures and how they can access those services there through the college.
Okay. Hi, I'm Rosa Ceballos, and my kiddo is in 11th grade, and I was the person doing the questions about the college. But my question is like, in when the kids are in college, there's no more IEPs for them.
So there is not.
Right. The last IEP, it follows them, and that's it.
Right, so there is not an IEP per se that that continues into college, but if the child is on track to receive a high school diploma, is that what you're saying, Rosa?
Yeah.
Okay. So after receiving the high school diploma and your child moves on to college, you can share that IEP document and your child can engage with that disability services department at the college, so that your child maybe can have access to some supports. There will not be service providers, such as speech OT and special education teachers supporting them, but they can have access to some support such as maybe extra time, note taking and such that could help them at college.
Oh, okay.
Now, if your child is, are you a client of the regional center?
He's in the regional center, yeah.
Yes, so after your child turns 18, there are a host of services that he'll have access to through the regional center. So I would encourage you to reach out with your service coordinator to see if
Uh-huh.
they may provide him with supports after 18 as well.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for your answers, and it was a very interesting course.
Thank you. I'm glad to be of help.
Thank you.
Okay, we did just have one more question. What signs did your daughter display that alerted you to have her evaluated for autism?
Wow, that's a great question. So having been a speech pathologist, people always ask, well, did you become one because your daughter had autism or, chicken or the egg? But I had been a speech pathologist, oh gosh, I think 10 years or so when she was identified. And so I had worked with enough kiddos to know that something different was going on with my daughter at age about 18 months. And it took another 18 months before she was evaluated and found eligible under autism because she's a girl. First of all, I'm going to be honest. Girls are not as quickly identified, especially if they are verbal. I had her pediatrician said, well, she has eye contact. She looks at me, she was, hyperlexic. And so she, could identify words and letters and sounds and all that good stuff at a really early age. But she also had really significant struggles in fine motor skills and gross motor skills. She had just started walking at 17 and a half months, but she knew letters and sounds and all this other stuff. And so looking at her patterns of development and seeing some disconnect there is what made me consider, wow, maybe she's on the autism spectrum. Not in a way that is obvious as a kiddo who, was non-speaking or still in diapers and whatnot, but somewhere on that spectrum. So I continued to persist. I asked again. It took another year and a half before finally someone did assess and identify her. But one of the biggest things I think about was she was around 18 months or so. And we were at Target. I love to share this little story. And she was sitting in her cart and she was saying verbatim words from her favorite TV show, Caillou, the episode that we had seen that morning. And I thought, oh boy. Because one of the typical, identifying characteristics is repetitive language and repetitive behaviors. And so for her to be saying that back verbatim versus saying, oh, mom, she had certain amounts of words, but, I like Caillou, using more of collaborative reciprocity in her language. It was more of verbatim exactly what Caillou had said that morning. And so that was like the icing on the cake that made me think, okay, we really got to get this kiddo assessed. But then it still, again, took 18 months because I think now it's better so far as a little bit better as far as identifying kiddos, but there's still sometimes a delay in identifying kids, especially kids who are on autism spectrum, but are verbal, who have words. Sometimes they're misdiagnosed as ADHD. I've seen that happen a lot. or underdiagnosed. But in our case, because I had that experience, that led me to pursue an assessment for her. So I always, as I said to parents, ask questions and trust your gut. I didn't give up during that 18-month time. I just stayed persistent because I knew, and I just wanted to rule in or rule out. And for us, it was ruling that in. So, if you have questions or concerns about your kiddo, I encourage you to be persistent. If you still have those nagging questions, be persistent and investigate it to see, because early intervention is powerful. It's really powerful for kiddos who have different kinds of unique needs. And my daughter's doing, fairly well now in 5th grade, but I really credit a lot of that to the fact that she received a lot of good services before she started kindergarten.
I just want to thank everyone again for attending. I want to thank our guest, Crystal Sanford from Sanford Autism. One last time. Thank you so much for joining us, and we will see you all next time on the Wednesday webinar series. You all have a blessed rest of the day.
Thank you.